I came across a video on YouTube and I want to watch it with you. So the video is called Land, the Original Bitcoin. It's by Financial Historian. It was posted just a day ago. It was posted November 7th, 2025. I really like this guy's content and I think it's really great. I don't quite agree with what he was saying in this video. And I want to try to explain my thoughts while we listen to this video and we watch all the way through. So let's start the video. I'll play it now.
Every empire was built on it. Every war was fought for it. Every civilization that lost it vanished. Before gold, before fiat, before Bitcoin, there was land, the oldest form of wealth, the first currency, and the most brutal measure of power. Welcome to the Financial Historian, where money, power, and history collide. And nothing is ever as simple as it looks. We talk about digital scarcity like it's a new invention, like Bitcoin was the first time humans turned math into value. But long before blockchain, there was another immutable ledger, carved not into code, but into soil. Land was the original hard asset, finite, visible, unforgeable. The one thing that couldn't be printed, mined, or cloned. And because of that, every system that came after, gold, credit, fiat, crypto, has been a desperate attempt to recreate what land already was, a store of value backed by reality. You see, money was born because not everyone could own land. It was a receipt for access, a way to trade slices of permanence without owning the earth itself. But the truth never changed. Land wasn't created to serve money. Money was created to serve land. In ancient Egypt, wealth wasn't counted in coins. It was counted in acres along the Nile. Floodplains were value. Harvests were liquidity. Pharaohs didn't hoard metal. They hoarded territory. Whoever controlled the soil controlled life. Fast forward to Rome, the world's first corporate empire. The Senate distributed conquered land as latifundia. Vast estates worked by slaves. Land wasn't just income, it was citizenship. Collateral and status rolled into one. The poor didn't just lack money, they lacked a claim on existence itself. And when Rome collapsed, the currency it left behind wasn't gold coins, it was feudalism. Europe's dark ages were not defined by ignorance, but by ownership. The king owned the crown, the church owned the land, everyone else owned nothing.
I think a lot of what he's saying to this point is pretty accurate. It sounds like it makes a lot of sense. And I haven't looked into the details of the history here, but a lot of it does seem like it makes sense. And keep in mind that all of this is before Bitcoin. So everything that he's talking about here is before Bitcoin. I don't quite think that he's thought about all of the benefits of Bitcoin in and of itself. In the older times when, let's say, he's talking about what he's talking about here, your land could be taken from you by, let's say, the kings. People weren't able to own land. People owning land is relatively recent from the research that I've done. It was owned by the people in the higher classes of society, the kings, the people who ran society, the politicians, all of the people who were considered, I guess, the higher classes. So back then, you couldn't own land even if you wanted to, because you didn't have the ability to do that.
That's the part most people miss when they talk about the good old days of sound money. There was nothing sound about it if you didn't have a title deed. You could work a field for 40 years and still die owing rent to someone who had never touched the soil.
But if you got paid in gold, which I don't really think was happening back then, if you got paid in gold, you could go anywhere in the world and you could buy land. You could trade that gold, or not even for land, for anything of value. If you had enough gold, you could travel around the world, however the methods that were available back then were, and you could pay for the things that you needed. So that is a way of getting self-sovereignty. And also you have to think of it from another perspective. If a king came to you, let's say you owned land and a king came to you, let's say your family owned land for generations, and a king came to you and they said, "We want your land." And you say no. They just kill you. They don't care about you. They'll just take your land from you. And there's nothing that you can do to stop that from happening. That's how easy it is for, let's say, the leaders to take your land even today. We think that we have property rights, but in reality, if your government comes to your house and says, "We need this land to build a highway or to extend this park or do whatever," how are you going to defend yourself against your government? They are powerful enough to take your land from you, and there's nothing that you can do about it. So if you think of it from that perspective, then land really isn't comparable to Bitcoin or to money. Land has its own purposes. You can use it for shelter. You can use it to, let's say, plant food, to grow food. It has its purposes, but it's not self-sovereignty like what money gives you. Money lets you go wherever you want to and spend that money. Let's say you want to go to a different country, you can do that. You can't really take your land with you. That's not possible. That's impossible. Let's say all the people who are in war-torn countries right now, if they have their wealth in land, they can't take that land with them to another country. That land is there. And whoever blew up their land in the first place, whoever blew up the real estate that they had, the building that they had on the land, whoever that was, they can take that land from them. And there's nothing that the previous owner could do about it. They just leave. They have to leave or they get killed. There's no value placed on human life when land is available to be taken, when gold is available to be taken, physical gold, because you can kill people and you can take their land. That land still exists. That gold still exists. If somebody sees you and they see that you have gold on you, they can kill you and they can take that gold from you. But Bitcoin doesn't work that way. Let's say I hold my own private keys and somebody kills me. They don't know where those private keys are. Let's say I have a multi-sig with wallets in different continents. If they don't know where my Bitcoin is, if they don't know where those wallets are, those private keys, they can't access my Bitcoin. Whereas somebody walks into my house today and they say, I'm taking over, nothing I can do. They can kill me and they can still take that property. This is something that this video seems to ignore. But let's go back to the video and just continue to watch it till the end.
Land was wealth, but only for the few allowed to claim it. That exclusivity was its genius. The blockchain of the Middle Ages wasn't digital. It was written in law, lineage, and violence. It was transparent to everyone who mattered, and immutable to everyone who didn't. That system didn't end because it failed. It ended because it became too obvious. The peasants revolted, but the merchants rose. And by the time capitalism arrived, land had evolved, not disappeared. The Industrial Revolution was financed on land mortgages. Banks didn't lend against ideas, they lent against acres. Factories were built on collateral. Railroads were laid across purchased rights of way. Even the first government bonds, the so-called consols in Britain, were backed by land rents. When capitalism claimed it had replaced feudalism, it was lying. It simply monetized it. Land became financialized, chopped into parcels, titled, taxed, and securitized. Ownership went from privilege to product, and the same aristocratic logic rebranded itself as property rights. The feudal lord became the landlord. The serf became the tenant. Different names, same dependency. The irony? Every time humanity creates a new form of wealth, we end up rebuilding the same hierarchy. Gold was just condensed land, mined scarcity. Fiat was land abstracted, promises to pay rent in paper. And now Bitcoin, for all its radical promise, is digital land, finite, mined, owned, and defended by code instead of soldiers. Scarcity never died. We just learned how to simulate it. You can feel it in how people talk about Bitcoin. It's digital real estate, it's unforgeable property, it's freedom from the state. All language pulled straight from feudal DNA. Because deep down, humans still crave one thing, ownership that outlives them. Bitcoiners call it self-sovereignty. The nobles of old called it a title. Different tools, same impulse. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Even in a digital age, power still belongs to whoever controls the ground you stand on. Crypto wealth, stock wealth, paper wealth, it all flows back into real estate. When the price goes up, where do the winners park their profits? Land. When inflation hits, what asset holds value best? Land. And when
I think that this only applies in terms of fiat because fiat currencies always decrease in value. More fiat can be printed, meaning that the price of land in terms of fiat will always go up. So I don't know if this is a very accurate comparison with Bitcoin. I don't think he's really applied the right way of thinking here when you compare it to Bitcoin. So I don't know if this is accurate. He hasn't really considered that the price of land only goes up in terms of fiat because fiat is infinite. In terms of Bitcoin, the price of land only decreases. It always decreases. It keeps on decreasing. At one point, you could buy a certain acre of land for, let's say, thousands of Bitcoin. Today, it might be 1 Bitcoin or less than 1 Bitcoin. At some point, it'll be half a Bitcoin. Then it'll be 0.1 Bitcoin. 0.01 Bitcoin. It'll keep decreasing until at some point, the price of that piece of land has gone down so much in terms of Bitcoin that anybody can buy it. As long as they have Bitcoin, they can buy that land. In the past, when we had kings and we had these leaders who owned the land and they owned everything, they didn't allow people to take over land. But if they wanted to, let's say if somebody did own land, let's say they owned it for generations, those kings and those leaders could kill those people and they could take their land. And there's nothing that that person can do to stop them, because the kings and the leaders are always going to be more powerful than the average person. On the other hand, with Bitcoin, if somebody were to kill you and you have your private keys in multiple countries, multiple continents, they can't take your Bitcoin. They don't know where it is. They can't access it. It's very similar with gold. If somebody kills you and you have your gold there, if you have it in your pocket, they can take your gold from you. With Bitcoin, if you've memorized your private keys and they kill you, they can't take your Bitcoin from you. That Bitcoin is gone. They've basically wasted their opportunity to transact with you to get your Bitcoin.
Markets crash. What do central banks buy to stabilize everything? Mortgages, claims on land. You can't eat.
Again, even mortgages, it's based on fake money, based on fiat. On a Bitcoin standard, I don't think we're going to have mortgages, because in terms of Bitcoin, land decreases in value. Real estate decreases in value. And over time, it keeps decreasing. At some point, a house was worth 64,000 Bitcoin. Today, it's worth 4 Bitcoin. The price of land decreases in terms of Bitcoin because Bitcoin is finite and we can develop more land at any time if we really want to. Over time, you're going to see that there are more politicians who own Bitcoin, and they know that in terms of their Bitcoin, if they keep developing more land and they get rid of the red tape that's around developing new land, if they get rid of that red tape, then the price of that land in terms of their Bitcoin decreases. Their purchasing power actually increases. So they're going to want that to happen in the future. Today, politicians own land and buildings and real estate. So they don't want to decrease the value of that real estate. They don't want to add more supply of land and real estate to the market. So they keep that red tape. They keep the zoning laws that stop people from building more houses. They charge taxes to developers, making it so that the developers don't have as big of an incentive to develop more land and sell it to other people. All of this is done to keep the price of real estate up. On a Bitcoin standard, you can't do this. People who save in Bitcoin will always see that the purchasing power of their Bitcoin in terms of real estate will go up. They'll be able to buy more land over time. They'll be able to buy more properties, buildings over time with the same amount of Bitcoin. So, for example, in 2011, 64,000 Bitcoin bought you one house. Today, 64,000 Bitcoin is worth $6.4 billion. You can probably buy a really nice building in New York City with 64,000 Bitcoin. Over time, what you can buy with your Bitcoin will keep increasing, and you'll be able to buy bigger and bigger parcels of land with your Bitcoin if you choose to.
Bitcoin. You can't live inside a share certificate, but you can sleep on land. You can plant on land. You can defend land. That's why every revolution that pretends to escape it eventually circles back to it. Because land isn't an asset. It's the stage where every other asset performs. We like to think money evolves, that technology makes us freer. But if you zoom out far enough, you'll notice the same cycle repeating across centuries. First comes land, then comes credit, then comes collapse. And when the paper burns, we run back to the only thing left that can't be printed: dirt. It happened after the South Sea bubble in the 1700s. It happened after the stock crashes of 1929 and 2008.
Keep in mind that every example here is with assets that you can't really take self-custody of. So in 1929, there was the Great Depression, which was a result of people not being able to take self-custody of their gold. In 2008, there was the Great Financial Crisis, which was as a result of banks creating more mortgages and dumping them into the market, creating subprime mortgages so that people who really can't afford houses can buy them. So all of the crashes that we saw in the past were a result of banks being able to be completely reckless with the money that they create.
Every digital boom ends in a very physical rush back to real property. And that's not superstition, it's gravity. Because while currencies inflate, technologies change, and empires fall, land just sits there, quietly compounding. It's the only investment that doesn't move, yet somehow everything else moves around it. Every
That's a disadvantage. If you get attacked and your entire net worth is in land and the person who's attacking you is more powerful than you, what are you going to do? You can't take that land with you. You're either going to die defending it or you leave and you get nothing. Whereas with Bitcoin, again, if the person who's attacking you tries to take that Bitcoin from you and they kill you, they may not be able to get that Bitcoin from you. That Bitcoin may be completely inaccessible forever because if they kill you and they don't have access to your private keys and you're the only one who has access to your private keys, they can't do anything about it.
age claims to have invented a better version of land: gold, bonds, fiat, crypto. But none of them replace it. They only orbit it. Even central banks, the apex of abstract finance, still hoard land through real estate holdings and government property portfolios.
Having a sound form of money makes it so that governments don't hoard land and real estate, and the people who need it actually get it. It makes it so that investors don't hoard land and real estate. It means that the people who actually want to live in a house are the ones who own it. They don't have to rent it from someone else. They buy it as a consumption good. They buy it to live in it so they don't have to live under somebody else's rule. And they don't have to own properties and then pay somebody else cash flow over time. They can own the property themselves. With fiat, that's not possible. With Bitcoin, that is possible.
They don't say it out loud, but they know, in the end, all value must settle somewhere real. That's the cruel genius of land. It doesn't have to change to stay relevant. Everything else does.
Again, something that I don't quite agree with. Bitcoin is real. It's connected to the real world. There are real people mining. There are real computers being used as nodes to defend the network. The people who own Bitcoin like it because it doesn't change. It stays exactly the same. There's always only going to be 21 million Bitcoin. There will always be an average of 10 minutes between blocks. There will always be a mining system. There will always be transaction fees. These things will never change. You'll never be able to spend Bitcoin that's not yours. Land works very similarly. I would say that land is technically decentralized because if one group of people or one individual tries to take over too much of it, they won't be able to defend it. And some other people, other countries, other individuals will come to take over the land that they can't protect.
Today, the value of all the world's real estate is over $380 trillion, more than the global stock and bond markets combined. Let that sink in. Every innovation, every financial product, every line of digital code we've ever invented still sits beneath a ceiling made of land. It's the real.
I think this is a problem because today we've financialized real estate. We lend against real estate. So people buy more properties than they need. If you can't lend against real estate, if you can't create fake money out of thin air, then why would people want to own that real estate? Why wouldn't they just want to own their Bitcoin? If they need to own this land for purposes other than to live in it, to farm on it, then why would they want to own it? There's no reason because it takes a lot of money and effort to maintain land. There's a lot of costs involved in maintaining land and owning land. There's maintenance and repairs. You have to pay property taxes. You have to pay all these different things in order to own land. On the other hand, with Bitcoin, this doesn't apply. You just own your Bitcoin, you put it in self-custody, and that's it.
Reserve currency, the collateral behind civilization. Land doesn't just generate wealth, it defines it. It's the benchmark for credit, the backbone of
This
taxation,
is the
and the
old
invisible
system.
foundation of the monetary system. When governments borrow, they borrow against it. When banks lend, they lend into it.
Again, this is the old system. This doesn't consider that with Bitcoin, we have a better form of collateral because the banks, if they want to lend to you against your Bitcoin, they can take custody of your Bitcoin. And if you don't pay them back, they can immediately sell it. When banks lend against real estate, they're actually taking a ton of risk because let's say you stop making your payments and it takes time for them to sell the property. They confiscate it from you. It takes time for them to sell it. In the time that it takes for them to sell it, because real estate is not very liquid, the value of the property may decrease significantly. Whereas with Bitcoin, if they were to confiscate it from you, they can sell it immediately. There's always a market and they know exactly what the price is for that Bitcoin because that Bitcoin is part of a global market and anyone in the world can buy it from that bank if they need to sell it for fiat or if they need to sell it for something else. Keep in mind that lending against Bitcoin only exists while fiat exists, and I don't think fiat will exist forever. You can't really lend Bitcoin against real estate because real estate values decrease over time. And if the bank wants to sell the real estate that they confiscate in terms of Bitcoin, they're going to lose value.
And when nations collapse, it's the land, not the paper, that survives the ruins. The modern world likes to pretend ownership is fluid, that we've moved beyond the old hierarchies. But every system still answers to the same map.
I think Bitcoin truly does move us out of that old hierarchy. Anyone can own Bitcoin. There's no restrictions to how much you can own. The poorest person in the world can go and create value, and then they can put that value into Bitcoin. And then eventually, at some point, they're going to move up the ranks in wealth compared to other people in the world.
The top 10% of humanity now owns more than still answers to the same map, just with new borders.
I want to go through this part again here. I think this is really important.
The top 10% of humanity now owns more than 85% of the world's land value.
What he's saying there without realizing it, I think, is that land is a game of Monopoly. The 10% of people who own land, who started the game of Monopoly before the other people who came after them, have already won it. The people who came after them can't win it anymore. It's over because those people who own the land, the 10% who own the 85%, they don't have to sell their land. They can just keep borrowing against it over and over again. They never have to sell it if they don't want to. Whereas with Bitcoin, you still have a land grab happening. Anybody can own Bitcoin. If you want to own Bitcoin, you can. If you don't want to own it, you can go ahead and ignore it if you want to. But the thing is that over time, you're going to get less and less of it. The difference with real estate and Bitcoin, though, is that with real estate, you don't have to sell it because we created fiat currencies to make it so that the wealthy in the world get to keep their land forever. Bitcoin, on the other hand, can actually be transferred from one person to another. So the people who own it can actually spend it. And at some point, merchants are only going to want Bitcoin. With fiat, they didn't have a choice. With gold, they also didn't have a choice because you can't really move gold around very easily. With real estate, they also didn't have a choice because you can't pay somebody, let's say, with a brick for the things that they want to sell you. You can't pay somebody with a fraction of a house. What Bitcoin does is it takes all of the best qualities of fiat and gold and it combines them and it makes it so that Bitcoin is money that you can actually transact and you can save in.
That's not a coincidence. That's the persistence of feudalism hidden behind market prices and mortgage contracts. We call it a housing market, but that's a polite lie. It's not a market, it's a sorting mechanism. Real estate doesn't just shelter people, it shelters capital. The wealthy don't buy homes to live in them, or they buy them to store money. Money that needs a physical anchor in a digital storm. In cities like London, Vancouver, and New York, entire neighborhoods have turned into vaults. Windows dark, doors locked, properties owned by shell companies registered in offshore trusts.
Isn't that breaking how the social contract works? If people want to live in those cities, they can't because the houses are already owned. You can pay the rent if you want to. There are places where you're paying like $4,000 a month for a 300 square foot property. But when the people who want to actually live in those cities can't afford it anymore, then what's the value of those properties? There is no value at that point. I think Bitcoin is making this very obvious. People who own land in these cities are going to want to move over to Bitcoin because Bitcoin is a way better form of money. You can move around with it. You can spend it anywhere in the world. Before Bitcoin, nothing existed that you could use as wealth anywhere in the world. Even real estate, you can't really do that with real estate. Fiat doesn't really work either because with fiat, you have certain restrictions. The people who save in fiat are going to constantly be stolen from. It can be created out of nothing. Gold doesn't work either because, again, it's very difficult to move around. It's very difficult to transact with somebody, let's say, across the world with gold.
It's not housing, it's collateral with a skyline. The financial system depends on this. Without real estate, most modern credit would vanish overnight.
That's exactly what we want. We want to break down the current financial system because the current financial system is based on a game of Monopoly that's already over. You can't win in the current financial system if you're born as, let's say, a Gen Beta, the people who are born 2025 onward. You can't win. It's impossible unless somebody before you transferred land into your ownership.
Mortgages are what turn potential into liquidity. The moment you sign a deed, your property becomes a data point in the machinery of global finance. That's why interest rates are the true ruler of modern life. They're not just about money, they're about land access. Raise rates, and the gates close. Lower them, and the bidding wars begin. We treat it as economic policy, but it's closer to land rationing. And yet, despite all this complexity, the principle hasn't changed since the first medieval charter. The few own, the many rent. We just replaced the manor house with a mortgage.
This is something that would actually be solved by Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin could completely get rid of this problem. I don't think we would have the same problem with a Bitcoin standard that we have with fiat. The interest rates can be artificially increased and decreased because fiat is fake money. With Bitcoin, all interest rates are determined by the market. So on a Bitcoin standard, anybody can own land at any time. If they own Bitcoin, they can exchange it for any amount of land that it's worth exchanging for. So let's say you have 1 Bitcoin, you can exchange it for 1 acre of land. You can exchange it for 1 acre of land if you want to. That's your choice. But because people aren't exchanging their Bitcoin for land, more people are moving out of land into Bitcoin, and people are moving their wealth from real estate into digital land, digital property. The value of land is decreasing in terms of Bitcoin. I've had multiple people meet with me one-on-one, and they've sold properties because they understand Bitcoin a little bit better. They don't want a second job. The only reason why a lot of land is owned is because it's used as a savings vehicle. The people who own it just want to use it to save for the future. Now there's a much, much better savings vehicle available with much, much lower barriers to entry. So anyone can buy it, anyone can get exposure to it, and people are figuring it out, and they want to get rid of their land, their old savings vehicle, for the new savings vehicle, which is Bitcoin.
Just replace the manor house with a mortgage. But here's the twist. For the first time in history, the scarcity of land is no longer just physical, it's engineered. Governments limit supply through zoning. Developers inflate prices through speculation. Central banks keep credit cheap enough to make the game look fair. Every actor has learned to protect the illusion of scarcity because the entire system depends on it.
Again, it's an illusion. It's not real. Bitcoin is real scarcity.
Land became truly affordable, if ownership were universal, the hierarchy would collapse. Because land isn't just where value lives, it's where power hides. You can see this more clearly in the developing world, where land rights are still unstable. In Africa,
because of Bitcoin, I think the power will move from land to Bitcoin. So people will be able to own their own land. They'll be able to have that freedom of building on their own property.
Latin America, and parts of Asia, the fight for title is the fight for survival. Corporations and elites quietly buy up millions of acres, often larger than entire countries, for agriculture, lithium, or future carbon credits. These aren't real estate deals. They're resource preclaims on the 21st century. Digital wealth is the illusion of liquidity. Land is the right to extract reality itself. And that's what makes the comparison to Bitcoin sting. Bitcoin was supposed to break the monopoly, to give people a form of ownership that governments couldn't touch. In the beginning, it looked like it might. A decentralized ledger, a finite supply, a network outside of politics. But the longer it lived, the more it began to look like the world it tried to replace. The early adopters became the landlords of cyberspace. They mined first, accumulated most, and now rent out their holdings through exchanges and lending platforms. The promise of freedom turned into another pyramid of timing and access. Scarcity, once again, concentrated at the top. And when
Again, the only reason why that's even true is because of fiat. It's because fiat hasn't died yet. At some point, when nobody wants fiat, that's when fiat dies. I don't know how long that's going to take. It could take decades. It could take hundreds of years. It could take multiple generations. It could take one generation for all we know. Let's say Gen Alpha, Gen Beta. Maybe they don't want fiat at some point. Maybe their first bank account is a Bitcoin wallet. Then how do we continue making fiat valuable? How do we continue forcing people to use fiat when they know that fiat will continue to decrease in value? At that point, you're going to have to move your Bitcoin around. People will be working for Bitcoin. They'll be exchanging things for Bitcoin. They'll be exchanging houses for Bitcoin. They'll be exchanging food for Bitcoin, gas, cars, everything will be sold for Bitcoin. But keep in mind that this is going to take time, like I said. It's going to take merchants wanting to accept Bitcoin before that exchange actually happens. If merchants don't want Bitcoin, then why would anybody sell their Bitcoin? They can just borrow fiat against that Bitcoin, and they can give that fiat to whichever merchant they need to go to. At some point, merchants are going to have to figure it out that fiat currencies are a scam, and that's already happening. The people who are accepting Bitcoin are probably going to do much, much better than their competitors. Let's say Steak and Shake, for example. I guarantee you that they're going to be significantly bigger than what they are today because of their Bitcoin holdings, whereas McDonald's will massively underperform against Steak and Shake. This is because Steak and Shake is accepting Bitcoin in exchange for the food that they create. This is the best way to accumulate Bitcoin. Anyone can do this. You can create any kind of value if you want to, and you can exchange it for Bitcoin. If you work a job, you can exchange that value that you get in terms of your salary for Bitcoin.
those profits were made, they flowed back into the real world, into real property. Crypto gains became condos, tokens became titles. Because at the end of every digital illusion, the winners cash out into the same physical scarcity land. Even the language gave it away. Bitcoin mining, real estate in the metaverse. It's all
The metaverse has nothing to do with Bitcoin, so not sure how that's relevant.
the same metaphor, the dream of digital land ownership for a world that can't afford the real thing. But the irony is deeper than that. For all the talk about decentralization, even Bitcoin depends on geography, on electricity hardware and physical servers rooted somewhere on Earth. Its supposed independence is an illusion.
They're everywhere on Earth. So again, I don't know if that's quite accurate.
It's land again, wearing a new mask. So, what does this mean for the future of wealth? It means the game never really moved online, it just expanded the board. And the same rules still apply. He who controls scarcity controls value. He who controls value controls time. And he who controls time owns everyone else's labor. That's the hidden continuity of civilization.
The thing with Bitcoin though is that anybody can own it. That's the biggest difference. With real estate, there are massive barriers to entry to owning that real estate, to owning that land. Your government will also constantly charge you property taxes. You'll have to pay for maintenance, repairs. You have to go through your lawyer. You have to go through your realtor. You have to do all of this. And then again, somebody can take that land from you. With Bitcoin, that's not the case. You can get as much Bitcoin as you want to. You can get as little Bitcoin as you want to.
From the pharaohs to the metaverse, power has always been territorial, not metaphorical. Even the richest companies in the world, Apple, Google, Amazon, measure their dominance not just in servers or code, but in land footprint. Massive campuses, data centers, real estate portfolios.
There are probably going to be companies that are bigger than these companies that he mentioned in the future because they own Bitcoin and not land. They don't have to deal with all of the expenses that come with owning land. For example, MicroStrategy is one of the companies that are creating digital credit, and they own $70 billion worth of Bitcoin, and they don't own that much land. The market cap of Strategy is now in the top 500 of all the publicly traded companies in the USA.
Code, but in land footprint. Massive campuses, data centers, real estate portfolios, because they understand something the rest of us forgot. No matter how digital life becomes, control still requires dirt. The Romans had their empire. The British had their colonies. Today, it's real estate investment trusts and sovereign wealth funds buying the planet piece by piece, mortgage by mortgage. And the ordinary person, for all the talk of financial freedom, is more landless than ever before. Owning a home has become the modern test of citizenship. The difference between being inside the system and outside of it. Renting isn't failure, it's taxation without legacy. That's the part of the story nobody tells you when they talk about Bitcoin or democratized finance. The rich don't hoard cash, they hoard permanence. And permanence only exists in one place, the ground beneath your feet. Because in the end, every currency, every coin, bond, or token is just a promise that you'll be allowed to stay on the land. That's the original contract. And everything else is commentary. You can invent new technologies, new tokens, new financial utopias, but until you solve the problem of ownership, you're just running simulations. And history doesn't reward simulations, it rewards whoever holds the deed. So the next time someone tells you Bitcoin is digital gold, remind them gold was only valuable because it came from land. And when the Wi-Fi drops, when the markets crash, when the servers go dark,
I don't know if you made a mistake there, but gold wasn't valuable because it came from the land. It was valuable because it was scarce. It's hard to create more of it. It's hard to find more of it. It's not valuable because somebody took it out of the ground.
it won't be the blockchain that feeds you. It'll be the soil someone else owns. Land was the first asset. It will be the last. Because no matter how fast we innovate, how high we fly, or how virtual our world becomes, they're not making any more of it.
After watching that video, I wrote a little post on X, you can see here. He kind of mentions near the end that you're renting and you're not getting any equity out of it. You're just paying a tax. What I wrote here is that renting is not a waste of money. You're paying to consume the property, you're getting shelter. In the time that you own that property, in the time that you rent that property, you technically own it, and the owner can't access the property in that time that you're using it as a rental. So you can see here, the owner doesn't get access to the property during that time that you're using it as a renter. Fiat currencies make it seem like real estate values increase over time, but in terms of Bitcoin, the value of real estate only decreases. Study these two pictures, and I guarantee you won't want to invest in real estate anymore. So you can see here, in terms of fiat, the price of land keeps going up. At this point in 2011, a house cost 218,000 US dollars, while in terms of Bitcoin, it cost 64,000 Bitcoin. Today, the same property costs 4.2 Bitcoin, while it costs 426,600 US dollars. The increasing value of real estate is a complete illusion. It doesn't actually happen. The value of real estate doesn't actually go up. It actually goes down over time as more people develop more properties and buildings and houses. As more land is developed, the value of previously existing land is diluted. Fiat currencies are designed to make you think that the price of land will keep going up forever because it makes you borrow fiat to buy more land. With Bitcoin, that illusion is done. You don't have that illusion anymore. In terms of Bitcoin, the price of land will keep decreasing forever. I found a video of Grant Cardone, who's a billionaire real estate investor. He owns thousands of properties, saying that Bitcoin is a better investment. So watch this video.
$1 billion of Bitcoin or $1 billion of real estate. I'll take the Bitcoin right now. Why? I don't have to do a title. I don't have to do an appraisal. I don't have to do a survey. I don't have to go through the banks. I don't have to get a loan. It doesn't come with termites, tenants, evictions, the government, taxes, bullshit. Yeah, I'd take the Bitcoin in a heartbeat.
And that's the billionaire mindset. That's the billionaire.
He completely changed his mind. He used to be deep into real estate and he would never talk about Bitcoin. Now he's changed his mind, and there's going to be more people after him who own a lot of real estate who are willing to sell it to buy Bitcoin because that's the only wealth that they have. They want Bitcoin. They want to get rid of their wealth in the old system and they want to transfer it to the new system. I think if you keep ignoring this, if you don't figure out that Bitcoin is directly competing with real estate as a store of value, it's directly competing with stocks as a store of value, if you don't understand this, you're going to miss out. You're going to see that the price of real estate keeps decreasing in terms of Bitcoin. The price of stocks keep decreasing in terms of Bitcoin. If you have a real estate portfolio worth 100 Bitcoin today, at some point it'll be worth 10 Bitcoin, then it'll be worth 1 Bitcoin, then it'll be worth 0.1 Bitcoin. It'll keep decreasing because Bitcoin is finite while real estate isn't. If you're interested in learning more about Bitcoin, you can join my school community where I talk about Bitcoin all the time. We have posts on here, we have courses, we have weekly live sessions. You can talk to other Bitcoiners as well. Really great group of people who have joined this community. There's more content on here as well that you don't find on YouTube. Go ahead and check that out in the link in the description below. It's called the Retire with Bitcoin community. If you're interested in booking a one-on-one session with me, if you want to talk about real estate, if you want to talk about selling your properties and why you should or shouldn't, you can also book a meeting with me in the link in the description below. If you found value in this video and you want to learn more from me, you can watch this video here where I explain why you should keep it simple and just buy Bitcoin and relax.